Cowboy, is your mind always between my legs? Is that why you look so lost out here? Emma drove down the dusty path that led to her family's ranch, the tires of her old truck kicking up small clouds of dirt in the late afternoon sun. She had been away from this land for years, city life taking most of her time, but now she felt a strange pull to return. The wide fields, the soft hum of the wind, and the occasional crow overhead reminded her of childhood summers spent running barefoot through the tall grass, laughing as the cattle wandered lazily around the pasture. There was a comfort here, an honesty that the city could never give. She inhaled deeply, letting the scent of dry earth and fresh grass fill her lungs, feeling a mix of nostalgia and excitement. When she arrived at the ranch house, it stood much the same as she remembered. The wooden fence was slightly weathered, and the paint on the barn had faded under the sun, but everything had a familiar charm. As she stepped out of the truck, her boots crunching against the gravel, she noticed someone moving near the paddocks. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, was leaning against the fence, staring off into the open fields as if he was trying to solve some invisible puzzle. His dark hair caught the sunlight, and though his expression seemed distant, there was a quiet strength in the way he carried himself. Emma raised her voice, hoping to announce her presence. "Hey! Anyone home?" The man turned slightly, and she realized it was Cole, one of the ranch hands her family had hired. He wasn't just a worker. He was the type of man who seemed like he belonged to the land itself. His boots were worn, his shirt dusted with dirt, and the lines of hard work were etched into his hands. He gave a small nod but didn't immediately speak, his eyes still scanning the horizon. Emma couldn't help but notice the furrow in his brow, the way his jaw tightened.
Cowboy, is your mind always between my legs? Is that why you look so lost out here?
Path. Emma drove down the dusty path that led to her family's ranch, the tires of her old truck kicking up small clouds of dirt in the late afternoon sun. She had been away from this land for years, city life taking most of her time, but now she felt a strange pull to return. The wide fields, the soft hum of the wind, and the occasional crow overhead reminded her of childhood summers spent running barefoot through the tall grass, laughing as the cattle wandered lazily around the pasture. There was a comfort here, an honesty that the city could never give. She inhaled deeply, letting the scent of dry earth and fresh grass fill her lungs, feeling a mix of nostalgia and excitement. When she arrived at the ranch house, it stood much the same as she remembered. The wooden fence was slightly weathered, and the paint on the barn had faded under the sun, but everything had a familiar charm. As she stepped out of the truck, her boots crunching against the gravel, she noticed someone moving near the paddocks. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, was leaning against the fence, staring off into the open fields as if he was trying to solve some invisible puzzle. His dark hair caught the sunlight, and though his expression seemed distant, there was a quiet strength in the way he carried himself.
Emma raised her voice, hoping to announce her presence.
"Hey! Anyone home?" The man turned slightly, and she realized it was Cole, one of the ranch hands her family had hired. He wasn't just a worker. He was the type of man who seemed like he belonged to the land itself. His boots were worn, his shirt dusted with dirt, and the lines of hard work were etched into his hands. He gave a small nod but didn't immediately speak, his eyes still scanning the horizon. Emma couldn't help but notice the furrow in his brow, the way his jaw tightened. He looked lost, though she didn't know why. Trying to lighten the mood, she called out again, walking closer. "Cole, are you daydreaming or are you really just enjoying the scenery?" He finally turned fully, meeting her eyes for a brief moment. A small awkward smile flickered across his face, almost apologetic, and Emma felt a strange curiosity. There was something in him that seemed untouchable, almost like he carried the weight of the ranch and the world on his shoulders at the same time. But then, as if sensing her attention, he looked away again, focusing back on the fields. Emma decided to tease him a little, letting her playful side take over. You look like someone is keeping your mind busy with more interesting thoughts than just the cattle, she said, a teasing smirk on her lips. Barris so slightly, and he blinked, caught off guard. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but closed it again, unsure of what to say. Emma chuckled quietly to herself, realizing she had caught him off guard, but she couldn't tell if it was because of the joke or because he was genuinely distracted. The air between them felt charged, though not in the way she had expected. There was no romantic spark, at least not yet, but there was something undeniably human. Beret. Real. Vulnerable. Bust. As Emma made her way toward the barn, she kept stealing glances at Cole, noting how he straightened the fence posts with careful precision. Every movement seemed deliberate, controlled, as if he was performing a quiet ritual to keep the chaos of the ranch at bay. But she wondered what was going on in his mind. What thoughts made him look so distant, so lost? But she decided it wasn't her business. At least, not yet. Inside the barn, she was greeted by the familiar smell of hay, leather, and horses. One of the older mares nickered at her arrival, rubbing its nose against her arm in recognition. Emma laughed softly, brushing her hand along the horse's neck. She remembered the countless hours she had spent here as a child, learning how to ride, how to care for the animals, and even how to mend fences. This place was a part of her, even if she had left it behind for so long. Cole eventually followed, lingering near the entrance of the barn. He didn't speak much, just observed as Emma moved among the animals. Every so often she would glance at him and he would return her gaze briefly before looking away again. It was frustratingly intriguing. There was something unspoken between them, a tension that neither fully understood but both could feel. Later, Emma helped feed the horses, carrying buckets of oats and water across the stable floor. Cole silently assisted, making sure the animals didn't spill the food, his movements precise and efficient. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was charged. Emma began to notice little details, the way his hands moved, the careful set of his shoulders, and the intensity in his eyes when he focused on a task. Desperate. He wasn't just a cowboy going through the motions. He was deeply connected to his work, as if the ranch depended on him entirely. After finishing with the horses, they walked outside, and the sun was beginning to dip behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Emma sighed, looking out at the vast open land. It was peaceful here, yet there was a strange energy in the way Cole stood next to her. She decided to break the silence, wanting to understand the man a little more. "Cole," she began softly, "can I ask you something?" He nodded, giving her his full attention for the first time that day. "Why do you look so lost?" "You're not just thinking about the ranch, are you?" Her tone was gentle, curious, not teasing this time. Cole hesitated, running a hand through his hair, unsure of how much to reveal. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but steady. Burrs, hard to explain. "There's a lot to think about. Animals to care for, fences to fix, the land itself. It's never ending." Emma smiled, understanding a little. "Sounds like a lot of responsibility. No wonder you look distracted." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment the distance in his eyes softened. "It's not that I'm distracted, Beck. Just that my mind is always on something. There's no time to relax. Not really. Out here, everything depends on making the right choice, the right move, at the right time." Emma nodded, feeling a new layer of respect for him. Beck. He wasn't just a quiet cowboy. He was someone who carried a heavy load with quiet determination. The teasing she had tried earlier seemed almost trivial now. But she decided to keep her curiosity alive, wanting to see more of the man behind the stoic exterior. As the sun sank lower, Cole led her to the edge of the field, pointing out different areas that needed work and explaining what had happened over the past few weeks. Bear. Emma listened, genuinely interested, and sometimes interrupted with questions, not to challenge him, but to understand. Slowly, the walls between them began to shift. The playful teasing was still there, but now it mixed with genuine dialogue, and she could sense a connection forming, not romantic yet, but real. By the time they returned to the barn, the first stars were appearing in the sky. Emma felt a strange satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment not from work, but from beginning to understand someone she had barely known hours earlier. Cole was still reserved, still careful with his words, but he no longer seemed completely lost. He had begun to allow her presence to reach him, and that small change made all the difference.
Emma climbed back into her truck to leave for the night, glancing back one last time at the barn and the fields stretching beyond it.
She realized that Cole was more than just a figure in the landscape. He was a man carrying his world on his shoulders, trying to navigate it the best way he could. She smiled quietly to herself, thinking that maybe tomorrow she could learn more, see more, and perhaps even help him carry some of that burden. As she drove away, she noticed Cole standing at the edge of the paddock, watching her go, and for a fleeting second his eyes didn't look lost at all. They looked thoughtful, almost like he was considering something he hadn't allowed himself to think about before. Emma's heart lifted slightly. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she wanted to find out. The tension, the mystery, the unspoken connection, it all promised that her stay at the ranch would be far from ordinary. And as the night settled in with the crickets beginning their song and the moon rising above the hills, both Emma and Cole felt a quiet anticipation. Something had shifted in the air between them, a spark, a curiosity, a subtle acknowledgement that neither of them fully understood yet. But one thing was certain, the ranch would no longer be just a familiar place of memories. It had become the stage for a story neither of them had expected, a story that was only just beginning. The next morning, the ranch was bathed in soft golden light. Emma woke early, the air crisp with the faint smell of dew and fresh earth. She stretched, feeling the muscles in her back complain slightly after the drive yesterday, and smiled. She was determined to make the most of her stay, to reconnect not only with the ranch but with herself. The city had taken so much from her, patience, quiet, even her sense of wonder, and here, in this wide-open space, she could breathe again. As she walked toward the barn to check on the horses, she noticed Cole already there. He was leaning against the fence, sipping from a thermos, the morning sun glinting off the metal lid. He didn't immediately see her, his focus on a patch of land where the grass was particularly dry. Emma watched him for a moment, fascinated by how natural he seemed here. Every movement he made was measured, almost careful, but there was strength in it too. She wondered if he ever allowed himself to relax completely, or if the weight of responsibility was always pressing down on him.
"Good morning, she called lightly, hoping not to startle him.
Cole turned, giving a small nod. "Morning," he replied, his voice low but steady.
Did you sleep well?" Emma smiled. "Better than I expected."
"This place. It feels different at dawn. Almost magical."
Cole's lips twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile.
"Dawn has its own way of showing the land."
"You notice things you can't see later in the day?"
Curious, Emma stepped closer. "Like what?" Cole gestured toward the fields. "The way the shadows fall. The dew on the grass. The quiet moments before the animals start their day. Pace. It's peaceful, in a way that city life never is." Emma nodded, absorbing his words. She could feel a subtle shift in him compared to yesterday. He seemed a little more at ease, though still focused on his thoughts. Bad. She decided to help him today, not just out of curiosity, but because it might give them a chance to understand each other better. Want some help with the horses? She asked, grabbing a bucket. Cole looked at her, hesitating briefly, then nodded. Sure. That would be helpful. Together they moved among the stables, feeding and brushing the horses. Emma watched him closely. He was efficient, but also gentle, handling the animals with a careful respect that made her heart soften. She realized that his quiet demeanor wasn't a lack of emotion, it was depth. Cole had a way of noticing things that most people overlooked. He saw every twitch of an ear, every flick of a tail, and reacted instantly.
Emma tried to mimic his precision, but more often than not, she ended up splashing a bit of water on the floor or dropping a handful of oats.
Cole would glance at her briefly, raising an eyebrow, but never criticized. His patience was quiet, unspoken, yet tangible. By mid-morning, the sun had risen higher, warming their backs and drying the dew. Cole decided it was time to check the fences, and Emma offered to come along. Pay. She had always been curious about ranch work, but she had never done it this seriously. They walked side by side through the fields, the tall grass brushing against their legs, and the wind carrying the smell of hay and earth. Fact, see that section over there? Cole pointed to a line of fence posts that leaned slightly. We need to fix it before the cattle wander out. If one gets loose, it can cause a lot of trouble. I get it. It's about responsibility.
Everything here depends on careful attention. Cole glanced at her, surprised at her understanding.
Exactly. A small mistake can have bigger consequences than you'd think. As they worked, Emma tried to match his rhythm, hammering posts and tightening wires.
Cole worked silently, occasionally offering tips, but mostly letting her figure things out herself. She noticed his eyes flicking to her from time to time, but whenever she looked directly at him, he would return to his task. It was frustrating, in an interesting way. She wanted to know what he was thinking, but he kept it close to his chest. Around noon, they took a break under a large oak tree near the edge of the field. Cole pulled out another thermos, and Emma accepted a cup of coffee, the warmth seeping into her hands. They sat in silence for a moment, watching a herd of cattle move slowly across the pasture. Emma couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and curiosity. Cole was different from anyone she had ever met. Not loud, not flashy, but deeply grounded in who he was and what he did. You're good at this, she said finally, breaking the quiet.
I mean, not just the work. You seem in control, even when it's hard.
Cole shrugged slightly. I've had a lot of practice. And I've learned that worrying doesn't help. You have to focus on what you can change, Bet. Emma smiled. Sounds like life advice, too. Cole met her gaze, his eyes thoughtful.
Maybe it is life here.
It's honest. You see things clearly. No distractions, no pretenses. Just you and what needs to be done. For a moment they simply watched the herd, the warm sun on their backs, and the wind carrying the faint scent of wild flowers. Emma felt a connection growing, subtle but undeniable. Despotee, she realized that Cole wasn't lost because he was distracted. He was lost in thought because he cared so deeply about everything around him. And somehow that made him even more fascinating. Later, they moved on to mend a small section of broken fence. Emma struggled with the wire at first, twisting it awkwardly, and Cole stepped in, showing her a smoother technique. Bet. Their hands brushed briefly as he guided her, and both of them felt a small jolt, a spark of awareness. Emma laughed softly, brushing it off as coincidence, but she noticed the way Cole's eyes lingered for a fraction longer than necessary. "You're a fast learner," he said, his tone almost approving.
Emma grinned. "I had a good teacher." As the afternoon wore on, the work continued, but their interactions became lighter, more playful. Emma teased him occasionally, and he responded with dry humor, the corners of his mouth twitching in ways that made her smile.
It was a delicate dance, a push and pull of curiosity and restraint. Neither wanted to reveal too much too soon, but both were clearly enjoying the developing camaraderie. At one point, a horse spooked nearby, kicking up dust and causing Emma to stumble.
Cole reacted instantly, catching her by the arm and steadying her. "Careful," he said, his voice firm but not harsh. "You have to respect the animals. They sense fear and hesitation." Emma looked up at him, feeling a rush of gratitude.
"Thanks. I didn't expect you to be so quick."
Cole shrugged, though his eyes softened. "Experience. You get used to anticipating things."
The incident, small as it was, created a quiet bond between them. Emma realized she could rely on him not just to guide her in work, but to watch out for her in ways that were subtle yet deeply reassuring. And Cole in turn seemed to appreciate her willingness to engage, to learn, and to share the moment without pretension. By late afternoon, the sky had turned a pale orange, and they began walking back toward the barn. Their conversation flowed more freely now, covering topics from childhood memories to small details about ranch life. Emma laughed at some of Cole's dry observations, and he even allowed himself to chuckle at a few of her jokes. For the first time, the distance between them felt less like a wall and more like a bridge. As they approached the barn, Emma paused, looking out at the fields. Breath. "I never realized how much goes into running a place like this," she said softly. "It's more than just work. It's responsibility, care, attention. Everything matters." Cole nodded, watching her with an unreadable expression. "Exactly. And sometimes it can feel overwhelming. But then, Goss, moments like this make it worth it."
Emma turned to him, curious.
"By moments like what?" He hesitated, then gave a small, almost shy smile. "Moments when you see someone trying, really trying, and not just for themselves. Moments when the land, the animals, even the work, it all feels alive because someone cares."
Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest.
There was honesty in his words, a quiet depth that drew her in. She realized that the teasing from the first day had faded, replaced by genuine understanding. She wanted to know more about him, to see what shaped this quiet, strong man, who carried so much responsibility yet remained grounded. As the sun dipped lower behind the hills, Emma felt a sense of anticipation. But tomorrow would bring more work, more chances to interact, more opportunities to see beyond the surface. But for now, she was content simply being here, sharing the space and slowly discovering the layers of someone who had seemed distant and mysterious just a day before. Cole watched her climb back into her truck to leave, the wind catching his hair and the fading sunlight casting a warm glow over the ranch.
"He didn't feel lost this time."
Not entirely. There was a shift, subtle but real, in the way he saw the day, the land, and perhaps even the possibility of connection.
And though neither of them fully understood what was growing between them, both felt it, and both knew that this story, their story, was only just beginning. The morning sun broke over the horizon with a gentle glow, casting long shadows across the ranch. Emma woke to the familiar sounds of birds chirping and cattle moving quietly in the distance. The air smelled crisp and fresh, and she felt an unusual excitement rising within her. Yesterday had been a day full of hard work, laughter, and moments of quiet understanding. Today, she hoped to know Cole a little better, to see the man behind the careful, reserved exterior. She stepped outside, stretching her arms as the sunlight warmed her face. Cole was already at the barn, as usual, moving among the horses with an easy confidence. His movements were deliberate, controlled, yet effortless, showing years of experience and a deep connection with the animals. Bay. When he noticed Emma approaching, he gave a small nod, his expression calm but watchful. "Morning," she said, adjusting her hat. "Morning," he replied, his voice low and steady. "You're early today."
Emma smiled. "I wanted to make the most of the morning. The air here feels
Different. Better.
Cole's eyes softened slightly. It does.
There's a peace in the early hours that you don't find anywhere else. Together they moved through the barn, feeding and brushing the horses, as they had done yesterday, but today felt different. There was a quiet curiosity in Emma, a desire to understand not just the work, but the man who did it. She noticed the small things, how Cole adjusted the bridle on a horse with careful precision, how he spoke to the animals in soft tones, and how he seemed completely present in the moment.
"You really know these animals," Emma said, her voice full of admiration.
It's like you understand them in ways I can't even imagine. Cole glanced at her briefly. You get to know them by spending time, by paying attention, They teach you patience. Emma nodded, watching as he led a young colt out to the pasture. His hands were steady, his voice calm and gentle, and she felt a quiet respect growing inside her. She realized that his strength wasn't just in his skill, but in his patience, his understanding, and the care he gave to everything he touched.
After finishing with the horses, Cole suggested they check on the farthest pastures, where some fences needed repair and a small creek had caused erosion. Emma agreed, eager for the chance to spend more time with him.
They walked side by side through the fields, the tall grass brushing against their legs and the sun warming their backs. The quiet between them was comfortable, filled with the sounds of nature and the occasional lowing of cattle. As they reached the creek, Cole stopped and gestured to a section of eroded fence. "But this part needs fixing before it becomes a bigger problem," he said. "If the cattle get through here, it could cause a chain reaction of trouble." Emma nodded, studying the area.
I see what you mean. It's like one small thing can affect everything else.
"Exactly," Cole said, his voice thoughtful. "You have to think ahead, plan carefully, and act quickly when needed." They worked together to repair the fence, passing tools back and forth, tightening wires and replacing broken posts. At one point, Emma struggled to hold a post steady while Cole hammered it in place. Their hands brushed, and for a moment, both of them paused, aware of the contact. Emma felt a small thrill, a sense of connection that went beyond words. Cole looked at her, his eyes softening, but he didn't speak, letting the moment pass naturally. When the fence was finally secure, they stepped back to admire their work. Emma wiped sweat from her brow and smiled.
"Not bad for a couple of beginners."
Cole allowed himself a small chuckle. "Bast, you did better than I expected. You're learning fast." Breaths. Emma laughed, a light, happy sound that seemed to make the air feel warmer. Thanks, but I had a good teacher yesterday, and another one today. Cole raised an eyebrow, a faint smile on his lips.
Flattery won't get you out of work. She laughed again, shaking her head. I know.
But it might make the work more enjoyable. As the afternoon approached, they found a quiet spot under a large tree near the creek. Cole sat down on a fallen log and Emma joined him, sipping water from her bottle. The silence between them was comfortable, no longer filled with the uncertainty of yesterday. Instead, it felt like a space where they could begin to share more than just tasks.
Cole, Emma began softly, can I ask you something personal? He looked at her, his expression neutral but attentive.
What is it? You seem thoughtful, she said carefully, almost always focused on something deeper than what's right in front of you. What's going on in your mind? Cole took a deep breath, leaning back against the log.
It's not easy to explain. I've had a lot of responsibilities from a young age.
Life here, it teaches you to think ahead, to anticipate problems, and sometimes it feels like you're carrying the weight of the world. Emma listened intently, her curiosity and empathy growing. It must be hard carrying so much all the time. Do you ever get a break? Cole's lips twitched slightly, almost forming a smile. Desperate. Rarely. But it's the life I chose, or maybe the life that chose me. This land, these animals, they need someone to care. And I can't let them down. Despair. Emma reached out, touching his arm lightly. I think it's admirable. Most people wouldn't have that kind of dedication. You care more than most would even notice. Cole looked at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. You notice? But I do, and it's impressive. But it also makes sense why you sometimes seem distant or lost. You have a lot on your mind.
He studied her for a long moment, the sunlight catching the edge of his hair, and then he exhaled slowly. I've never really shared this with anyone before.
Most people wouldn't understand, or they'd think I'm strange for feeling this way about a ranch and the work it requires. Emma smiled gently. I understand. I might not have grown up here, but I can see why it matters so much to you. And I don't think it's strange at all. I think it's admirable. For the first time, Cole allowed himself to relax completely. The tension in his shoulders eased, and he looked out at the fields with a soft expression. Emma felt a sense of closeness growing between them, a quiet understanding that went beyond words. As they sat together talking about life, work, and small personal stories, Emma realized how much she enjoyed being in his presence. He was different from anyone she had met before, reserved, focused, but also deeply thoughtful and kind. And she felt a connection forming, one that didn't need to be rushed or forced. Later, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, they started walking back toward the barn. Emma noticed how Cole's gaze occasionally lingered on her, subtle but noticeable. Bess, she felt a small thrill, a mixture of curiosity and warmth. The teasing from the first day had faded, replaced by genuine understanding and shared experiences. But when they reached the barn, Cole paused, looking out at the fields. You know, he said quietly, it's rare to find someone who appreciates this life, who sees it for what it really is. Most people don't notice the little details, the effort it takes, the care required. Emma nodded. I notice, and I appreciate it. I might not understand everything, but I see how much it means to you. And that's enough for me.
Cole looked at her, a small, genuine smile forming.
Disparities, thank you. That means a lot.
As she climbed back into her truck to leave for the night, Emma felt a deep sense of satisfaction.
Today had been more than just work. It had been a step toward understanding Cole, toward building a connection based on respect, trust, and curiosity. And though the day was ending, she knew that tomorrow would bring more opportunities to learn, to share, and perhaps to deepen the bond that was slowly growing between them. Cole watched her drive away, the evening light casting long shadows across the fields. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel lost. He felt seen. And that was a feeling he had rarely allowed himself to experience. As he turned back toward the barn, he felt a quiet anticipation for what the next day might bring, knowing that the story between him and Emma was only beginning, and that there was much more to discover. About the land, about life, and about each other. The morning air was cool and crisp as Emma stepped out of her truck. The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and gold, and the fields shimmered with dew. Today felt different from the previous days. There was an anticipation in the air, a quiet sense that something significant might happen. She had spent hours with Cole over the past days, learning, working, and sharing moments that had slowly built trust between them. But today, she wanted more than just companionship. She wanted clarity, but she spotted Cole near the fence, checking the cattle. He looked up and nodded, a faint smile on his face. Beth. There was a calmness about him today, a subtle confidence that Emma hadn't noticed before. She took a deep breath and walked toward him, determined to speak honestly and openly. "Good morning," she said, keeping her tone light but steady. "Morning," Cole replied, his eyes following her as she moved closer. "You're early again." Emma smiled. "I like the morning here. It feels like a fresh start, every day."
Cole nodded, turning his attention back to the cattle briefly before looking at her again. "It does."
The mornings are quiet, but they are also full of possibilities.
Emma hesitated for a moment, then decided to speak her mind. "Cole, I wanted to talk to you about something."
About the other day, and everything we've shared since then. Cole's expression softened, and he gestured toward the open fields. "Go ahead. I'm listening." She took a deep breath. "I think there's been some misunderstanding. When I joked about you being distracted, I wasn't trying to offend you. I was curious. And maybe I said it poorly." Cole looked down for a moment, then back at her.
"I know. And I want you to understand something too. I wasn't distracted in the way you thought. My mind, it's usually full of thoughts about the ranch, the animals, the work."
I carry a lot of responsibility, and it shows on my face, I suppose. I'm not always good at explaining it. This pace. Emma listened carefully, feeling a wave of understanding wash over her. "I think I get it now." Breaths. "You're not lost because of me. You're lost in thought because you care."
"Because you take everything seriously."
Cole's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "Exactly, and I appreciate that you see that now. Not everyone does." Emma stepped closer, her voice soft but earnest. "I want to understand you, Cole. I want to know the real you, not just the quiet, reserved side that most people see." For a moment, Cole looked at her, uncertainly flickering across his face. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right. I'll try, but it's not easy. This life, it's demanding, and I've learned to keep most of my thoughts to myself.
It's safer that way. Emma reached out and lightly touched his arm. I'm not here to judge or change you.
I want to know the person behind all the work and responsibility. Cole took a deep breath, then began to speak. He told her about his early years on the ranch, about the long days and nights he had spent learning to care for the animals in the land.
He spoke about the sacrifices his family had made and the sense of duty that had been instilled in him from a young age. Emma listened intently, absorbing every word, feeling a deep respect for the man standing before her. When he finished, there was a silence between them, filled only by the sounds of the ranch, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant lowing of cattle, and the occasional chirp of birds. Emma smiled gently. Thank you for sharing that. I can see now why you sometimes seem distant. It's not indifference. It's care. Deep, careful care. Cole's eyes softened, and for the first time, he allowed himself to feel completely seen. Thank you. It's rare for someone to understand that without judging. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that their connection had grown beyond simple curiosity or playful teasing. There was trust here, and an unspoken bond that had formed through shared experiences, understanding, and honesty. As the day progressed, they worked together as usual, but the atmosphere had shifted. The teasing and light humor were still there, but they were underlined by a deeper respect and understanding. Emma noticed the subtle ways Cole paid attention to her, how he made sure she was safe, how he guided her hands when handling tools, and how he included her in decisions about the ranch work. She realized that his quiet presence was comforting, steadying, and reliable. During a break under the shade of a large oak tree, Emma decided to take a risk. She looked at Cole, her voice calm but sincere. Cole, I'm glad I came back here, but for you. I feel like I've learned so much in just a few days. About this place, about life, and about you. Cole studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable at first. Then slowly he smiled, a smile that reached his eyes, warm and genuine.
I'm glad you're here too, Emma. You've
made things feel lighter in a way I didn't know I needed.
Emma felt a flutter of emotion.
She had never expected to find someone she connected with so quickly, someone who could make the weight of responsibility feel lighter just by being present. I think we make a good team, she said softly. Cole's smile widened slightly.
Yes. I'd like that, if you're willing. Emma nodded, feeling a sense of relief and happiness.
But I am very much. They spent the rest of the afternoon finishing tasks around the ranch, working side by side with a rhythm that had become natural. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on memories, dreams, and small hopes for the future. Emma shared stories from the city, while Cole spoke about his connection to the land and the satisfaction he felt in caring for it. There was no need for pretension or performance, just two people enjoying each other's company, understanding, and trust. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the fields, Cole suggested they take a walk along the ridge overlooking the ranch. Emma agreed, feeling a sense of anticipation. They moved slowly, side by side, letting the beauty of the evening settle around them. The sky was painted with vibrant oranges and soft purples, and the air carried a gentle warmth. Finally, Cole stopped, looking out over the horizon. Emma stood beside him, feeling the quiet energy between them. He turned to her,
his eyes serious but gentle. Emma, I want you to know that the connection we've built, it's important to me. Not just because of today, but because of everything we've shared these past days. I've never felt like this with anyone else. Emma felt her heart lift. I feel the same, Cole. I wasn't sure at first, but now I understand you, and I respect you.
And I want to see where this goes. Cole smiled softly, a mixture of relief and happiness in his expression.
Then we'll take it one step at a time. No rush, no pressure. Just honesty and understanding. Emma nodded, feeling a sense of contentment she hadn't felt in a long time.
Yes, that sounds perfect. They stood together, watching the sun dip below the hills, feeling a quiet but undeniable bond between them.
The teasing, the curiosity, and the shared work had grown into something deeper. Trust, respect, and the beginning of a meaningful connection. They didn't need words to define it fully. The understanding was already there in their shared glances, in the ease of their conversation, and in the quiet moments of simply being together. As night fell, they returned to the barn, tired but satisfied. Emma climbed into her truck, glancing back one last time at Cole, who stood at the edge of the field. His posture was relaxed, his expression calm, and she realized how far they had come in just a few days, from strangers to friends, from teasing acquaintances to people who truly understood each other. Cole watched her drive away, the headlights fading into the distance. He felt a sense of peace, a rare and welcome feeling. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't just thinking about responsibility or duty. He was thinking about connection, about trust, and about the possibility of something meaningful growing between him and Emma. And as the stars began to twinkle above the ranch, both Emma and Cole felt a quiet excitement. Their story was not finished. It was only beginning. But it was a story built on understanding, honesty, and a growing respect that promised a future full of shared moments, challenges, laughter, and perhaps even love. Tonight, the ranch felt alive in a new way. It was no longer just a place of work or duty. It was a place of possibility, a space where two people had found each other in the middle of vast fields, quiet mornings, and shared experiences. And as Emma drove toward the small town nearby to gather supplies for the next day, she felt certain of one thing. Whatever came next, she and Cole would face it together, and that was enough.